Impact. 12 mils at 0.6. Impact. Impact. Hey there, and thanks for stopping by. Now, if you're into long-range shooting, stick around because there's a ton of it coming up in this video. Now, if you're watching this, I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the Barrett Mark 22. The military just recently adopted as their primary long-range rifle. Now, a really cool setup in that it offers user-level barrel changes and includes a kit with 308, 300 Norma, and 338 Norma barrels. So from one rifle and scope setup, you get the ability to train with 308, which is a little bit lighter recoiling and cheap to shoot. You get an epic long-range performer in 300 Norma, which we're going to explore in this video. And then you get the 338 Norma, which is a great long-range caliber, but sends a heavier 338 caliber bullet downrange to carry some special and unique payloads. Now, it's the Mark 22 that inspired me to get my own MRAD a little bit over a year ago. This rifle originally came in 338 Lapua Magnum, which is extremely capable at distance, but I've always been a fan of 30 cal Magnums at distance, and I really wanted to try that 300 Norma barrel, so they weren't available at the time. I had to put myself on a wait list, and ended up waiting roughly a year through Euro Optic before this barrel landed at the first of this year. Now, since the barrel landed, I've been out tweaking my load and getting experience out at distance so that I could showcase the performance of 300 Norma for you in this video. Now, before we move on, you got to let me know in the comments, what are you expecting for long-range consistency out of this? Are we looking at a mile capability? Are you expecting 2,000 plus yards? You got to let me know. I've got my own opinion, but I also haven't pushed past 1,500 yet with consistency. So we're going to do that for the first time in this video. So from there, what we're going to do is start at 100 yards on paper, and then we're going to push out on steel and see how far I can make consistent impacts with 300 Norma. Again, this caliber is awesome. In my opinion, it makes a decent shooter look great with its ability to buck the wind, flat shooting, hard hitting, so it's easy to spot impacts. Awesome caliber that I can't wait to show off here. So if you like the sounds of that, first let's do a gear review and give you a close-up look at what I'm shooting, and then we'll fire this rifle up and let's start making some hits out at distance. So let's do it. So we've got some pretty nasty weather rolling in right now, which means we're probably going to be shut down for today. But before I head out, I wanted to give you just a quick look at what we're going to be running for a rifle and an optics package. So for the rifle, as I mentioned, this is just a factory Barrett MRAD. I've owned it now a little bit over a year, and between the 300 PRC, the 338 Lapua, the 6.5 Creedmoor barrel, and now the 300 Norma barrel, I've probably actually got several thousand rounds through the actual base rifle. The 300 Norma barrel, I think I've got about 200 or 250 rounds through it specifically in load development and tweaking my load, gaining confidence before I shot this video. So really capable rifle. The barrel is a factory Barrett barrel with a 1-in-8 twist in it, so it pairs really well with the 250 A-tips that I'm going to be shooting. So great package, factory trigger, nothing special about the rifle. Really happy with it. Love this rifle. Really glad that I purchased it. As far as a bipod, I'm running the Accutac HD50, which I believe is a very sturdy bipod, and it pairs very well for this rifle. It's certainly heavy, but a little bit of extra weight doesn't bother me on this rifle. You'll actually notice in this video, I added an extra pound of weight from my 100-yard zeroing to when I started to shoot steel, just trying to tame the recoil of that 300 Norma. This 300 Norma definitely kicks a little bit more than 300 PRC, so anything you can do to help tame that rifle will help you out at distance. For an optics package, I'm running a Night Force 7-35 Attacker F1 scope with a Trimmer 3 reticle in it. This is a scope I've run on this MRAD since I owned it, so a little bit over a year, and it's proven itself very capable to 2,000 yards and beyond. It's a great optic, it provides a ton of internal elevation, and I love that Trimmer 3 Christmas tree style reticle. I hope to show you some Tacticam footage in this video to give you an idea of how I use that reticle for long-range shooting. So no problems with the optics. This will give us a very capable package to be able to test the 300 Norma barrel. Now, I get a ton of questions through Instagram and in the comments about cant in my base. So this is a spur mount with 0 MOA built in. And the reason I run a 0 MOA base on this MRAD is the top rail actually has 10 mils already built in. So I don't feel the need to run any more. And I'm actually nervous that if I did run more elevation in the base, I wouldn't be able to get a 100-yard zero. So I believe 10 mils of elevation in the rail is enough. with a 0 MOA mount. And with my 300 PRC, my 338 Lapua, and I fully expect with the 300 Norma, that provides a capability out to about 2,200 to 2,400 yards to dial in this scope. So I really don't see a need to run a canted base on top of the rail. Now for ammo, I'm going to be running my own hand load, which is the 250 Hornady A-tip over in 568 powder. So this is a load I'm actually very confident in. I've got a little over 200 rounds of it downrange. I've tested it out to about 1,500 yards, and I'm very happy with how it performs. It runs about 2880 feet per second, and I think you'll see in this video that's very capable. That's more than enough to get the job done out to a mile, maybe even beyond. So with that, as the rain comes down, I'm going to shut down for today, and we'll be back at you shortly with a 100-yard and then pushing out on steel, so stick around. All right, here we are at 100 yards. Let's put 5 rounds of 250 A-tips on paper to see how we group. Now these will be the first rounds that I fire without the magneto speed attached, so if we need to, we'll make a correction on our 0 before we push out to steel. So here we go. There's quite a bit of mirage out there today, but the show must go on, so let's see what we do. A beautiful group. Let's take a close-up look. So I'd call that pretty respectable performance there at 100 yards. With that, let's push out and start shooting some steel. So I've moved back to a 2/3 Zipsic out there at 1,040 yards. Now this is not my first time shooting this distance with this barrel. I've spent a little bit of time in load development confirming my data out to this distance. So I feel pretty good here at 1,040. My velocity is 2880, so just shy of 2,900 feet per second. And with that, the app is calling for 6.5 mils of elevation. So I'm going to hold 6.5, and I've got a bit of a left to right wind. You can see my wind flag pushing just off to the right. So with that, I'm going to hold 6.5 elevation, and I'm going to hold left 0.8 mils, so just a bit more than the 4-mile-an-hour wind dot. It's worth noting, I'm not going to run the Tacticam here because under recoil it actually bumps me in the forehead, so I might save that for later in the video, but here at 1,000, I'm going to go without it. So 6.5 elevation, 0.8 left. Impact on the left edge. I'm going to cut that wind back to 0.6. Impact dead center. Right edge. Increase my wind hold just a bit. 0.8. Impact, let's click on the left edge. Just off the right edge. So 3 for 5 at 1040 on a 2/3 Zipsic. I'll take that with a little bit of windage air. So 1040 almost felt easy with this 300 Norma. With that, I set up a full-size Zipsic out there at 1,570 yards, and I've got 5 rounds loaded up, so let's see how well we can connect. I did install the Tacticam, and to do that, I pushed my stock back 1 click. I still should be able to see through the scope, and hopefully this thing won't hit me in the forehead, so that'll give you a view of what I'm seeing. Now for 1570 on a 250 A-tip at 2880, my app is calling for 12.7. So rather than holding that, I'm actually just going to dial it, and then that way I only have to hold my windage left and right. So with that, We got 5 rounds ready to go. Ooh, my wind flag is barely moving. I'm gonna go 0.7 to center. Ooh, bad wind call. Looks like that actually impacted up there at about 1.2. Impact, low left on the plate. I cut it back to 1.1. Just over the head. Windage look good. Impact in the neck. I may need to come down a tenth. So there's 12.6. Yeah, we'll go 1.1. Impact on the left edge. So we had a windage miss with the first round, and then we were able to correct that. It looks like I'm actually 12.6 to 1570. So happy with that performance. Let's push further. All right, so solid performance out to 1570 so far. With that, let's push out further. I've got a 30-inch circle set up out there at 1,870 yards, and I've got 10 rounds of 250 A-tips loaded up. Now my app is calling for 17.1 mils of elevation to get out there, so that's what I've dialed on. For wind, my wind flag down there looks to be dead calm. And then right here, there's probably a slight right to left. So with that, I'm gonna favor 1 mil to the left with my first round. Scope is set to 25 power for the Tacticam. All right, just off the 1 o'clock. Let's go 1.3. Same spot, a little bit more wind. 6. Impact on the left edge, it looks like. So I'll cut it back just a little bit to 1.5. Impact at the top of the plate. Let's come down a tenth. My light fell off. Impact. 7 o'clock on the plate. I believe that was a T-post hit. The way the plate reacted. It definitely hit the plate moved, but I think it was T-post. Off that left edge. So was it 1.4? Got back to 1.1. Impact. Impact. Seems like 1.1 is the ticket. Impact. Man, what a run over a mile. I believe that was 6 impacts with a possible T-post. I'll have to review the GoPro or count my impacts, but that is awesome performance. I think I've got some rounds left. Yeah, I got a handful of rounds left. I might try to push that plate out even further, and let's see how far we can go. So I ran down and moved our 30-inch circle. There were 6 solid hits from 1,870 yards. That 7th one must have definitely been a T-post impact. And with that, I've pushed the plate on out even further, and I've got 8 rounds left that we can shoot. I think I've moved it back about 300 yards, and we'll see if we can actually range it. These SIG BDXs are just not having it, so that's the furthest I've pushed this plate in this field. With that, I think I'm going to have to try to mill it out. So definitely to get up there, I'm going to need some more bipod height. See if that'll do it. And again, my scope is set to 24 power. I'm going to call it 0.4 mils. So if I do screen record, I'll show you what I'm doing in the shooter app. So within the shooter app, I've already got the Barrett MRAD loaded in. And then with that distance, I can say my target is 30 inches. And I'm reading mils, and I got 0.4. That's calling for 2,083. I feel like that's a little bit short. I'm going to bump that down to like a 0.39. 2136. 2,136 yards is what we'll go with. That's 21.7 mils. So there's 17, 4, 21 plus 7/10. So there we are, 21.7 dialed on. Now I'll get this camera set up and we'll send some shots and see how we can connect. All right, we're losing our light pretty fast, so let's go ahead and send these last 8 rounds. Again, I think I milled it at about 2135, and I've got 21.7 mils dialed on. Let's send our first round and see if we can catch an impact. So my first round, I'm going to start 1.5 left. All right, let me know if you see an impact. All right, quite a bit high. So I'm going to come down a mil. So there was a mil down. Our elevation was just a little bit off. I'm going to cut that wind back to 1.2. Getting closer. I need to cut my wind back to 1. And I need to come up about 4. Came up 5 actually. Let's see if we can connect. All right, that dropped just off the 4 o'clock. So let's come up another 10th. I'm going to go 1.1. Man, just off the 7 o'clock, 1 more 10th up. And let's go 1. Impact. Do it again. just off the right edge. A little bit more wind. Oh, just off the left edge. Come on with this round. 1 mil. Just dropped low. That's all we got. I connected with 1 out of 8 at probably about 2,100 yards based on my elevation. So that's the furthest I've tried to push the cartridge. Sorry, it was a little bit unknown, but at least we connected with 1. So how cool was that? Just like I told you in the intro, 300 Norma makes a decent shooter like myself look pretty good. This thing's a ton of fun, and it makes long-range shooting seem really easy. Now, before I move into a shooting summary and my thoughts around it, I'd love to hear in the comments, how did the performance of 300 Norma and this MRAD stack up versus your expectations? While I'm moving through my thoughts, I'd love to hear yours. So what did we see in the video? At 100 yards, we saw great performance. I fired 5 rounds that were under an inch. That first round flew just a little bit outside of the group, and then the next 4 landed beautifully, I'd say within maybe 2/3 MOA. So no problem with sub-MOA capability out of 300 Norma from this MRAD. Again, the bullet was running about 2,880 feet per second, and as you saw in the video, that's no problem to get out to 1 mile and beyond. Really high BC out of that 250 A-tip that makes long-range shooting very consistent. So then we pushed out on steel at 1,040 yards, where we went 3 for 5. I was hoping for a little bit better, but a 2/3 IPSC is a really challenging target out there at that kind of distance. We had some windage misses with 2 of the rounds, but 3 of them connected, no problem. So very capable. 6.5 mils is crazy flat shooting to 1,000 yards. From there, I pushed out to 1570, where we went 3 for 5, and that's performance that I'm very happy with. So 12.5 mils to 1570 is basically exactly what it takes my 20-inch 308 SR25. So 1,500 yards with 12.5 mils to me is crazy. You saw my first round. I missed with the windage, but once I corrected that, I was able to hit pretty consistently on that full-size IPSC. So very capable of a man-sized target out to 1,500 yards, which is pretty awesome. From there, we pushed out over 1 mile on my 30-inch circle and went 6 for 10 at 1,870 yards. I was shocked with how well this thing performed. 6 out of 10, 60% hit ratio, over 1 mile, in a windy or a decently windy day. It wasn't crazy, but there was enough wind there that I had to correct for it. Awesome performance. Right at about 17 mils to get out there, which in my experiences versus 300 PRC and versus 338 Lapua Magnum is much flatter and much less elevation to get out to the same distance. So awesome performance out there over 1 mile. Then I pushed out on the 30-inch circle further than I've pushed out in this field. My rangefinder wouldn't range it, so I had to use a milling technique, which actually turned out to be fairly close, closer than I originally thought when I was actually shooting this video. So out there at what I believe was about 2,120 yards, based on where I ended up with my elevation, we went 1 for 8. So I milled that. I was off a little bit in my mill reading. It took me a couple of rounds to connect. I connected on, I believe it was the 5th round out there at 2,120, so I'm happy with that. I was looking for a bit more consistency there, but I had some windage errors. And going back and watching the footage, I actually realized I was impacting low, and I should have corrected up probably another 1/10 or 2, which actually would have put me pretty close to my original estimate of 21.7 mils. So I arranged it at about 2135 and dialed 21.7. And then if you remember that second round, I came down 1 mil and was way low. So I believe I actually corrected off of a round that maybe I had some shooter error in. So I believe my performance out there at 2120, based on where I ended versus what my dope sheet says. I'm happy with the performance, but I feel like as a shooter, I should have done better, and I wish I could have shown that on video. Either way, as you saw, very capable, 1 round connected, but all the other splashes were really close, and I think with more time out there at 2,000 plus yards with this rifle, I could be more consistent, and maybe we'll show that in future video if you want to see it. So in summary, great performance out of 300 Norma out to 2,000 yards. Really happy with it. Can't wait to spend some more time with it. Now, as a summary of my experience, what did I think? I definitely noticed 300 Norma is a pretty heavy recoiling caliber. You probably noticed from when I shot the 100-yard group to moving out to steel, I actually installed another set of weights. So I added roughly 1 more pound to the rifle to try to tame that. But this rifle still kicks pretty decent, definitely more I think than 300 PRC, and in line with 338 Lapua Magnum. So the recoil is there, but so is the performance. When I compare this to what I remember shooting the 300 PRC out to distance, it's much flatter shooting and very easy to connect. So with that, I'm really happy with it. Those 250 A-tips I felt like are a great match for the rifle. Very flat shooting, very hard hitting, and definitely could push them further than 2,000 yards. So hoping to do that in future content. Now with that, I appreciate you sticking around. I know this has been a long video. I hope you found it entertaining. I'd love to hear from you in the comments, and I'd love for you to interact with me here on the channel. I'm really trying to grow this channel and turn it into something really cool. We've seen a ton of growth recently, and I'm very thankful for that. So what you can do to help me grow is like this video, comment, let me know your thoughts, and subscribe. If you like this kind of long-range content, subscribing to the channel will make sure you're on deck to see my next video drop. So as it starts to rain right here, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Finally, don't forget to check me out on Instagram at Mountains Mullets America. It's a great place for us to interact, have DMs, and I'll give you a sneak peek of what I'm working on. So again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you'll stick around for my next video.